Hey guys, my name is Emily. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a video for you guys about something that I have a lot of personal experience with, and that is how to become a sports fan when you are somebody who didn't grow up watching sports, doesn't know a ton about sports. Basically, how do you get into sports as a total newbie? So as you can tell, I'm a pretty big hockey fan, the Washington Capitals specifically. But about this time last year, I don't think I had even watched one single hockey game, and I'd occasionally go to basketball games or football games at school, but that was really just to spend time with friends. And I always thought that I just didn't really like sports, but over the course of the last year, I realized that the thing that I didn't like was when people were elitist or wouldn't help me get into sports, and the thing I didn't like was that really hard to crack culture around sports, not that I disliked sports themselves. So I just want to give you guys some tips and tricks for how to kind of crack into that culture if you're not somebody who grew up knowing every single thing about sports or playing sports or watching football every Sunday with your family. If you're not that person, it can feel really intimidating and really difficult to get into that culture, but it's not impossible. So my first tip is to figure out what specifically is going to suck you in. So for a lot of people, that's just they grew up watching sports and so they're just naturally interested. But if you are having a hard time getting into it, having a hard time learning it, you have to figure out what it is about whatever sport, whatever team will get you sucked in. For some people, that's a really big rivalry. So if your best friend likes one football team and you know you love rivalry, maybe you're gonna start following the opposing football team. Or if you're super competitive, maybe you'd love to make a March Madness bracket and that's what's going to get you sucked in. Or for some people, if you go out and learn how to play soccer, maybe then you'll be so excited to watch soccer because you know the rules and you have experience playing it. For me, the thing that got me really sucked in was starting to learn about the players. So when I started following hockey and the Washington Capitals, I started to learn about the players, where they were from, where they've played before, their personal lives, their wives, their girlfriends, their children, their dogs, which it sounds kind of silly, and what does that have to do with them playing? But I found that for me, if I cared about the athletes and their story, then I was a lot more likely to care about the outcome of the game because I had some kind of emotional attachment. So step number 2 to getting into sports as a total newbie is to find some reliable news sources. And for every sport and for every team, that's going to be completely different. So if you're just really trying to get into your school's sports teams, maybe that's following your campus newspaper's sports section, or maybe if you're trying to follow your local baseball team, that's finding the newspaper's beat writer that's responsible for covering those games. For me, for the Caps, I found this wonderful blog called Russian Machine Never Breaks. They publish stories about all kinds of stuff from, what the players are doing in their bye week this week, where they're going on vacation, to statistical analysis, recaps, everything. So I love this blog because I think it's a really great place to find all kinds of news for the Caps. So if you find something like that, then you are golden. But I also definitely recommend trying to find newspaper reporters who are covering your sport or your team and keeping up with them. Tip number 3 is to go crazy with your social media follows. So I would start out by following your news sources, like your blogs, your reporters that I talked about before, but then start following the players and follow their significant others if you can find those accounts, follow their dogs, follow their best friend, follow their hairstylist, go absolutely crazy. Kept following more and more people, and the more people I followed, the more I was able to read about and learn about what was going on. Plus, if you're anything like me, you're probably on social media a lot anyways, so really integrating that into your regular social media practices makes it so much easier to keep up with sports if it's something that's new to you and that you actually have to put effort into. My next tip, and definitely the most important one, is to find a trusted watching buddy. The most important thing is that they're not going to tell you to be quiet and leave them alone and let them watch the game. These are people who you need to be able to ask your stupid questions to, but they won't make you feel stupid for them. For me, this person is my boyfriend Brendan, and I've never met anyone so patient in my life. Every time we would watch a game together before I really knew the rules about hockey or about basketball or really anything, I would ask all kinds of stuff, from basic rules like how do they determine what's offsides to things like how do they turn the ice into basketball floor, which some people would definitely say it doesn't matter, like why do you care about that? But instead of saying that, Brendan found a video and we looked it up and watched it together, and it was really interesting. So you really need to find somebody like that. It doesn't have to be your boyfriend, that's just how it worked out for me, but somebody that you're close to that you can watch games with who will answer your questions and not make you feel dumb. Because as much as people might like to think that they came out of the womb knowing everything there is to know about sports, they learned that, and maybe they learned it when they were 6 or 10, but they still had a time when they did not know and they had to ask and they had to learn. So there's no shame in being older and not knowing, because everybody has to learn from somewhere. It can be really discouraging to try to get into something new and do that with somebody who is all frustrated and expects you to be there already. I had a math teacher in high school who was super good at math, but she was so bad at explaining things because it just came so naturally to her. You'd get aggravated and frustrated if you didn't understand it right away. And you don't want to watch sports with somebody like that, because it's really hard to get into something new that's supposed to be fun for you if the person that you're supposed to be watching with isn't making it fun. My next tip is to watch the games and listen really hard to the commentators. This probably sounds super obvious, but for me, I was really surprised by how much I learned just from watching games and listening. At first, it was so confusing and I was really overwhelmed because they kept saying stuff that I didn't know what it meant. And of course, this is when I asked my trusted watching buddy all my questions. Even just watching games on my own and listening to the commentary, even if I didn't understand 90% of what they said, and then over time, once you hear the same phrases or words being used in the context where you can actually see what's happening, you just start to absorb that information and learn what those words mean. I think every sport has an absolutely ridiculous amount of lingo that is used, and I think the best way to learn that lingo is to watch the games and listen to the commentators, because you will see in the context of the game what that lingo means. My last piece of advice is to remember that there is absolutely no such thing as a fake fan. I think especially in sports, and it's especially often directed at women who are trying to get into sports for the first time, there's this tendency to think that there's some sort of level you have to reach in order to count as a real fan. But there's no such thing, and we should be excited to share our passions with other people. Nobody came out of the womb knowing every single advanced stat for every single sport. It's not possible. Even if you grew up with it, there was a time when you had to learn what things meant. And everybody went through that learning period. So just because you're doing it a little bit later in your life now, doesn't mean that you're any less of a fan than somebody who started watching the sport when they were young. It's just really important not to let other people get you down. If you have your trusted watching buddy or your supportive sports squad, or really anybody who's excited that you are starting to become interested in sports and you're trying to learn more, stick with those people and don't worry about anybody who might be trying to tell you that you don't count as a real fan, because there's no such thing as a fake fan or a real fan. If you like it, you are a fan. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, turn on notifications, and all that jazz. I'd love to hear what you guys thought about this video and what kinds of videos you'd like to see in the future. So please leave me a comment down below and let me know. I'm going to be responding to every single one of them. I love you all. Thank you for watching. See you next time.